Yeah. So thank you everybody for joining us. Welcome to our today's seminar. I don't know, but I know we are having few days to the second month of the year, but this is our first seminar of 2023, and please just allow me to say Happy New Year, everybody. Today we are excited to be joined by Professor and Dr. Preslav Nakov from, Professor will be giving us a talk today about fighting the global social media infodemic, from fake news to harmful news. So Professor Preslav Nakov is professor at Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence. Previously, he was a principal scientist at the Qatar Computing Research Institute, where he led the Tambly mega project developed in collaboration with MIT, which aims to limit the impact of fake news, propaganda, and media bias by making users aware of what they are reading, thus promoting media literacy and critical thinking. So yeah, welcome, Prof, and I'll just stop sharing my screen to give you a moment to share your screen. And yeah, over to you, Prof.
Hey, thanks for the invitation. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, awesome. Let me try to share screen. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so let me start. Well, we're going to talk about fake news, disinformation, and so on. So maybe the first question, I'm going to ask several questions. The first one is, is fact-checking the solution to disinformation? And so many people would think so, and there have been a lot of initiatives. So one of them is the fact-checking efforts by a number of organizations around the world. You can see some of them in Africa as well. There's a list supported by Duke Reporter Swap, which keeps track of the active fact-checking projects, and there are about 300 active, about 100 inactive, and this only includes the ones that are actually certified, those that have signed the International Fact-Checking Network Code of Principles. And so you might think that's a lot, right? But if you actually zoom in a little bit, and this information is probably a little bit outdated because obviously kind of more is getting fact-checked, but it just gives you some idea about Snoops, PolitiFact, those are the biggest ones. If let's say 13,000, 16,000, I think that PolitiFact now has about 20,000. Africa Check just has, 500. Maybe by now they have 1,000, right? But you just get the idea that it's not that much that has been fact-checked. And why is that? Well, fact-checking a claim can take quite some time. And the speed of fact-checking of entire fact-checking organizations, major ones, is typically 1 claim per day, sometimes 2 claims per day, right? So it's really, you cannot accumulate that much because it's really a lot of effort. It's not just saying true or false. You also need to write an entire article that justifies that, and you need to collect evidence and so on and so forth, which takes quite some time. And there have been other efforts like doing crowd checking, for example. There's the claim review schema, which has accumulated certain number of claims. Last time I checked, 77,000. And there's the Twitter Birdwatch program, which I believe now is renamed. They had about 12,000, just a crowdsourcing effort. So, and you see that it's not that much. And the question is, what can we do, right? If you believe that this is an important effort, and actually it is, because people do believe human fact checkers, and this is really influential and it's very helpful. Well, we can do 2 things. Number one, we can try to automate the entire process, and this is what everybody's doing. It's similar to the full machine translation effort, kind of similar to what you find with online's translation agents. Or you can try to make fact checkers more productive. That's similar to, let's say, if I do a parallel to translation technology, it's similar to translation memories, which are actually making the human translators kind of more productive. And the question is, what can we do to make human fact checkers more productive? Well, and the question is, what do they want? And we had a roundtable some time ago where we invited people from major fact-checking organizations, and this is what they told us. They told us, well, number one, they want to know whether something was fact-checked before, so that they don't fact-check it again. And number two, they want to know if somebody's before even that, they want to know what is interesting to fact check today, so that they can prioritize. Right. Number two, was it fact checked before, and number three, they want to be able to fact check as fast as possible, which means that they want tools to get them the necessary evidence to do that. And if you want to learn more about technology, specifically looking into fact checking, you can look into this survey that we have written 2 years ago. Now I can tell you about an effort that we have been running for several years. This is the ClefCheck.lab that has been running for several years. We have been looking into the full pipeline of the fact-checking process. And so we have looking into whether something is interesting to fact-check and the specific reasons for that. We have looking into whether it was fact-checked before, and then supporting evidence retrieval, and finally the actual fact-checking. And then in parallel, we have moved into fake news detection. So fake news is a different task. Fake news is about an article, and fact-checking is about a claim. And we have been covering a number of languages like Arabic, Bulgarian, German, English, Spanish, Dutch, and Turkish. Yeah, and then kind of it's one of the very few efforts that are actually looking into checkworthiness and checking whether a claim was previously fact-checked. And those are largely neglected tasks, but those are exactly the ones that fact-checkers really want to solve. And many fact-checking organizations are building internal tools to solve those. Okay, let's zoom a little bit into this kind of more exotic, if you want, tasks from people who are not really doing many fact-checking point of view. What is worth fact-checking? Well, before even doing looking into what is worth fact-checking, you might want to do kind of claim detection. So you might first want to accumulate all possible claims that are made in different documents, right, in the news, and after that you want to see which of those are important. So okay, and when extracting a claim, you might want a little bit of structured information. You might want to know who said it, and you might want to know what is the topic and what exactly is being claimed, and so on and so forth. And the next thing is deciding which of the claims are actually more important. And imagine the situation, let's say, of a political debate. It just finished, okay? And you have assembled a team of journalists that can actually sit down and this night check, let's say, 10 or 20 claims. The normal circumstances, that would take them quite some time, but now you have assembled a team and they are ready to check. I mean, the question is, what is interesting to fact check? And the typical debate has about 1,300 sentences, and some of the sentences might have even more than one claim. So what are the claims where you should actually, pay more attention to? And you don't want to waste time to try to find them, right? You want to kind of immediately propose maybe a rank list so that, people can still look into it, but kind of a list that is ranked so that claims that are more interesting to fact check are more likely to be higher up in the list. And you can actually solve this task by learning from what human fact checkers are doing. So after many such political debates, journalists write articles where they highlight certain part of the debate, and then they put a link to a fact-checking page where they say, okay, this is true or this is false. And for this specific task, we don't really care whether it's true or false or how true or any of that. We care that about the fact that actually humans have selected to fact check this specific claim in this specific sentence out of the big long document, right? And what we want is we want to build systems that are actually going to mimic that, right? And we actually have been building such kinds of systems where if you upload a debate, they are going to assign a score, of how interesting this claim is to be fact-checked. And you can look into this problem also in social media, and it's a little bit different. Yes. Is there a question or? Hello? Okay, I think we have people.
Yes. Sorry, Prof, you're muted.
I think you are still on mute.
Okay. Is it now fixed? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I was saying that the same problem of checkworthiness, you can explore it in social media. And fact checkers are often following the Twitter accounts of different celebrities and are trying to see, to spot claims interesting to fact check. And most of the claims are not interesting, but now and then there are some that are. And here, for example, this the claim by Eric Trump that Donald Trump is donating his salary to fight the coronavirus. And I guess you'd agree that's an interesting claim to fact check. And by the way, if you wonder, it's true. Okay, but here the task is not about whether it's true or not. It's about, okay, this is something that I would say that fact checkers might want to check. And the question is, what makes it checkworthy, right? Well, we have come up with different criteria. So maybe it has to be viral, should have the potential to be viral. Maybe it should contain a verifiable factual claim. And then maybe you should suspect also, I mean, if there's no verifiable factual claim, there's nothing to check, right? So this is a must. And then maybe it should be likely to be false, because if we don't suspect it might be false, then why are we fact checking it, right? Maybe it should be of public interest. Maybe it should be potentially harmful, right? And we have been doing annotation, asking people to answer those questions and finally answering whether they believe that a human fact checker should pay attention to, to fact check that. And actually what is interesting is that you can do this task of predicting whether something is checkworthy or not directly. This is answering this question 5, but you can also try to do multitask learning, trying to... okay, I think somebody's speaking. And you can also kind of see whether, you might want to solve several of those tasks simultaneously. And it turns out that if you try to simultaneously predict whether it's likely to be false, likely to be harmful, likely to be of public interest, and likely to be checkworthy, then you do much better at checkworthiness prediction, because you are decomposing the problem into the components that are actually making it, that are relevant and important. And we actually have a tool for that works in different languages. We have support English, Arabic, Bulgarian, and Dutch. And there's data that potentially can support even more languages. Now let me look into the other problem of detecting previously fact-checked claims. It is an important problem, and it offers an opportunity for interesting human-machine collaboration. So if you think about it, the fact-checking efforts are very important, and because people do trust automatic methods. Sorry, they do trust human fact checkers, but they don't really trust so much automatic methods. And the proposal is actually to look for previously fact-checked claims. And if somebody says something that was previously fact-checked, to say, look, I mean, this is true or this is not true, and here's evidence, right? And also, it's something that can help human fact-checkers, right? And I just want to say this is not really a trivial task. You might also want to solve it given a document. You might want to kind of spot every single claim that was previously fact-checked and potentially kind of point to the source that verifies it, right? It is kind of an important task. You can use this in different setups, and one of them is to during a political debate, imagine that you have like an automatic tool where kind of the moderator gets an assistant from a system that tells it, look, I mean, what the debater just said was previously fact-checked, and here's what he said, and here's what was fact-checked before, and this is fact-checked by a reputable source, and that's not true. And then this allows the moderator to put the politician on the spot in real time and to follow up with questions. And you cannot do this with just fully automatic system without reference, without support from human fact-checkers, because people don't believe and don't understand how the system came up with the proposal. But actually, if it points to human fact-check, then the moderator can be much more likely to trust the system and actually to use it in the context of the debate. And I want to tell you that this is not a trivial task, because here's an example. You see, Clinton says, I waited until it had actually been negotiated because I did want to give the benefit of the doubt to the administration. Okay, so it's not clear without the context. It's not really clear what this is even about. It's not clear who is I. Okay, it's Clinton. But there's it and what is being negotiated and so on. So basically, you need to understand the context on the source side. And similarly, you want to go and to understand when you're matching this against a previously fact-checked claim, you don't want just to match against the claim, you want to match against the entire document, and you need to understand the relationship between the different sentences. So basically, it's a complex problem where you want to reason over take the context on the source and on the target side into account. Okay, let me move to the next question. Is automatic fact-checking the solution to this information? Okay, so we have seen that human fact-checking doesn't scale that much because there are not that many claims that was previously fact-checked before. So maybe we can do this fully automatically, right? And let's see how we can do that. Well, one way to do it is you can actually do a lot of fact-checking using tables. There are statistical tables, and if I make a claim that, I don't know, let's say the economy of let's say Ghana grew by 10% last year. I mean, this is something that you can go and you can fact check based on some statistical tables. Maybe in Wikipedia, maybe in some other kinds of tables, right? And there has been work on that. Or you can do fact checking against Wikipedia, okay? And we have built actually systems to do that, where you say, okay, I want to see whether there's an article in Wikipedia that actually supports or refuses the claim. You can also fact-check claims by reasoning over what is happening in social media. So, for example, if there's a claim, you can see how this claim evolves over time. You can see whether at some point in the duration of the debate, there's a link, let's say, to an article, and you can try to fact-check this article to see whether it's fake news or not. You can see who is hosting this website, where the article is published, whether this is a fake news website or not. And you can also see if you don't know whether this website is reliable or not, you can see actually what websites point to it, which websites it points to, kind of, reason a little bit about over the graph structure. You can see how users react to what is being said, whether they agree or disagree. And you might want to know the reputation of those users, which you can establish by looking into who is connected to whom. And actually, you can see that it's a heterogeneous graph where we have tweets, you have news articles, you have websites, you have users, right? And you have different kinds of information. You have labeled information about very small number of nodes in this graph, right? You know about very small number of articles, whether they are fake news or not, and websites and so on and so forth. And that if you want to reason that. One thing that I would like to stress is that multilinguality is very, very important. So there has been a lot of work, and typically it's really done only for English. And these days, this information is really going into many, many other languages, also on different platforms. So we are proud that we have actually built a data set of claims that have been shared, actually fake news articles that have been shared more than 100 times on Facebook over the period from January 2017 until July 2019. Those are coming in different languages, not only English, also Italian, Spanish, French, German, Portuguese, Indonesian, and so on and so forth, you know. It is actually also bigger than previous efforts like Fake News Net, where we have PolitiFact and Gossip Cup, right? But the really important thing is that this is kind of multilingual, and we took those pages that we have been looking into, you know, how they spread in Twitter, and we have built this kind of graph, right? But in a multilingual setup, because it's really, really important. I mean, there's a lot of this information, you guys see it in Africa. It comes in different regions, in different languages, also different platforms. I mean, sometimes it's Facebook, sometimes it's in Twitter, sometimes it's on WhatsApp, right? And it's really important to go cross-platform and multilingual. And unfortunately, there's not much research in that direction. Then something else, you know, you can probably do better use of human fact checks, and this is also has something that I think has the potential to be used in other languages, right? Might be relevant for certain languages in Africa. Is crowd checking. So in many cases, people react to a claim by saying, "Oh, that's not true," or this is actually true, and point to a fact-checking article, right? And we have been like trying to mine this kind of information, collect it, and learn from those reactions, right? And of course, sometimes it's not kind of, you know, what they point to is not the correct link and so on and so forth. So it's kind of noisy information, but you can actually do quite a lot with this. And because if you think about it, those kinds of pairs of claim and corresponding article typically have about 1,000 examples. And here we have very quickly been able to collect 300,000 such pairs, right? And you can do this in other languages as well. So I think this is a very, very promising direction. And again, kind of, you know, the bird watcher program of Twitter is something similar, except that users directly reply in a different platform. Well, still the question is, okay, suppose we have an automatic system, right? I mean, still the question is, can we fact check every single claim in the world? Okay, even automatically. And well, one thing that we should say is that false information, unfortunately, goes much further and much faster than the real one. There is this famous article from Science that shows that false information goes 6 times faster on Twitter and further. And this is kind of quite famous article. And there's another one that is much less famous, but I find it really, really interesting. It shows that 50% of the lifetime spread of some very viral fake news happens in the first 10 minutes. What does this mean? Well, this means that if it's going to reach, let's say, 200 million people, the first 100 million are reached in the first 10 minutes. What does this mean? Well, we really want to fact check very, very fast, right? We need to react very fast. And the question is, what can you do? I mean, if you think of something like that, I mean, it takes time to accumulate human reactions, right? They're probably not going to be articles. They're probably not going to be tables, right? Or Wikipedia pages, because especially if it's something saying, oh, this happened in this little village, right? It's kind of an emerging claim. So you really need to act very fast. And what can you do? Well, you can do what journalists do. Okay, what are they asking for? They're asking, well, who is saying it? Are there 2 or 3 verified, reliable sources, you know, that are making this claim? Okay, so the proposal is kind of instead of focusing on the claim on the article, focusing on the source, and it's kind of a high level of granularity. And the advantage is that you can actually do this in advance, right? You can kind of in advance you can see, you can monitor which are the sources of this information of fake news, and you can profile them, and you can make a list in advance, and you can be prepared next time. So and I like to say that you can fact check the fake news before it was even written, because next time something comes, you can immediately check, okay, are those sources where that I mean, I don't know if it's true or not, but I can immediately signal that, look, everybody who is spreading it is like a bad source, or kind of or bad or unknown factuality. So kind of there are no reliable sources, which immediately can tell us, look, this message is there's something fishy about it, which means that, okay, maybe you don't block it, but kind of we can like try to limit its spread until kind of actually reliable sources start also saying the same thing, in which case it might be true. And for this, it's kind of really about profiling websites. Why websites? Well, if you just make a claim in social media and don't back it with something, anything, it self-fact checks very, very fast. People immediately start asking, okay, who is saying this? I cannot find any information anywhere. I mean, and so if you want to be taken seriously, you want to put links to websites that have a web page. Now, you need an entire website for that, which means that you are probably not going to make an entire website just for one, false claim. You are going to reduce, right? So because it's a lot of effort, it's a big investment to have an entire website. So, and over time, if you put several false claims, fake news on this website, kind of, we are probably going to detect you, right? And we are going to add it to the constantly growing inventory of, list of potential websites. And this is an idea that is also there, I don't know, let's say in antivirus programs. They are looking for malicious domains that if you browse, they are going to hack you and stuff like that. So he's similar kind of idea. And the question is, how can you do that, right? How can you fact check, kind of how do you profile an entire news outlet? Interestingly, this is an easier task, okay? Because there's much more information. You don't need to make a decision based on just one claim or just one article. You actually kind of can look into multiple claims, right? So and move into multiple articles, but also into other kinds of information. So you can look into what is there in the Twitter profile of this news outlet, what is there in YouTube channel. Not only what they say, but how they say it. Is there a lot of emotions, for example, in the sound? What is there in the videos? What is written about them? If they have a Wikipedia page, we can also look into what is written there. Who reads it? Who are the followers of this news outlet, right? And kind of how they self-represent in their social media profiles, how they react to what's being published, and many, many other things. What kind of images they have, what kind of security certificates they use, who is hosting them, what kind of web trackers they use, and so on and so forth. So kind of there's a lot of things that you can actually do, and you can solve this much, much more reliably. And kind of one other thing that we have been looking into is audience overlap. Okay, we have been looking into Alexa rank. And so, for example, if you go there, unfortunately, the website is now kind of has been discontinued, but the idea is this. I look into Wall Street Journal and I'm asking, okay, which are the most similar websites in terms of audience overlap? In other words, who are other media that share a lot of readership, a lot of people that are reading Wall Street Journal, but also are reading this other website? Well, the top four are Economist, CNBC, MarketWatch, and Reuters. Okay, and now the idea is that, okay, maybe if the hypothesis here is that fake news websites, users that they treat one fake news website probably read this other one, as well. And readers that treat this good website probably also kind of read this other good website, right? And you can imagine a graph. So kind of you start, suppose you have 1,000, we started with 1,000 media for which whether they are reliable or not. And then we ask for each of them, which are the top 4 or 5 most similar ones in terms of audience overlap. Then they ask what are the most similar ones for those, and so on and so forth. And starting from 100, you can go to 200, 300,000 websites, right? And now you want to label all these 200,000, 300,000 websites in terms of their factuality, potentially also bias left, center, right, if you want, starting from 1,000, the labels for 1,000 websites, right? So here we have like some green, some red, and the vast majority are unknown. And you want to use graph neural networks and kind of, propagate, this information together with all this information that you can get about the content and the user reaction and so on, but also kind of this graph structure and label the rest of the graph. And one thing that I want to stress here is that there's a connection between factuality and bias. So this is the media bias chart that shows that the extreme left media are also the least reliable, and the extreme right as well. And the most reliable media are the kind of the neutral ones. I mean, of course, it's just a correlation, it's not causation, right? But it's something that systems can actually exploit. And we have been doing that. So here, like trying to jointly predict factuality and bias. And when you try to do that, kind of you win, because sometimes the system is more certain about the bias and less so about the factuality. And if the system believes it's extreme left or extreme right, then it probably should believe that it's kind of less reliable. If the system kind of thinks that it's really balanced, then kind of this should also increase its confidence that this might be actually a factual website. And I want to talk a little bit about another topic, propaganda. So what is propaganda? Well, propaganda is a communication tool that is designed to influence the opinions or the actions of people with a specific goal in mind. Okay, and now propaganda is not good, it's not bad, it's not true, it's not false. Okay, by definition, it's just that somebody wants to influence our thoughts or our actions and has a goal in mind, and this can be a good goal or can be a bad goal. Okay, and this can be achieved using true information or false information. Actually, the best propaganda, journalists are telling me, is when you tell the truth, only the truth, but not the whole truth. Okay, and this is different from, for example, the correct term for fake news is disinformation, and it is something that is both false, it means harm. So if you pay attention here, propaganda doesn't mention anything about factuality and anything about harm. Okay. And there has been a lot of work on looking into propaganda, but we decided to look into the specific techniques, the specific ways in which we are being manipulated. Okay, and roughly speaking, those are two categories. They're kind of emotional ways to kind of influence us, and they're kind of logical fallacies, things that don't make sense logically, like black and white fallacy or whataboutism or bandwagon and so on. And we have built systems actually to detect those in text. Okay, so we have a system where if you give it, text, is going to highlight for you the use of those propaganda techniques in the text. So, for example, here he would find Anthony Fraudulent Fauci is the king of misinformation, is name calling, or mass murder, that's worded language, which is kind of emotional manipulation. Scamdemic is another kind of emotional thing. King of misinformation is another kind of name calling, and so on and so forth. Okay, and we have been working on this in other languages, recently in Arabic. We had a shared task on that, and currently we have an ongoing task in cooperation with the European Commission. We are looking into the technique of propaganda techniques in 6 languages. So we have English, but also French. We have Italian, German, Polish, and Russian. And we actually have some surprise languages, 3 additional languages. And on top of this, we don't have just the propaganda techniques. We also have framing, and we also have annotation what kind of article this is. Is it factual reporting? Is it an opinion piece? Is it satire? And it's very interesting because it's also kind of multilingual. And the goal is actually to expand this kind of annotation into trained systems for all European Union languages. And but of course, kind of we have interest in other languages as well. So I have shown some work in Arabic we have done. And why not some African languages, if there's interest in that. And those techniques, if you think about it, we have organized them into coarse grade categories. So if you have text, the first question to ask is the call like a slogan or something like that, or is it a statement? If it's a statement, does it manipulate, let's say emotionally, exaggeration or stuff like that, or is it about the argument? Then if it's about the argument, is it attack on the reputation or, kind of, of the person saying it or something like that, or is it about the topic? If it's about the topic, is the distraction kind of trying to, strawman, red herring, and so on, or is it relevant? If it's relevant, does it oversimplify the issue? Right? Or is it actually to the point, and so on and so forth. And you can reason over this in the text, and we have kind of data for that. One other thing that I want to mention, that there's a connection between factuality and propaganda, and the connection is that okay, so there has been there's not that much work at the article level that tells us, oh, this is fake news article and this is not, okay? So there's just like a few thousand examples. And today with the models that we're building, we probably want to have a few million, right? And what do you do instead? Well, we often just say, okay, we're going to generate automatically articles that imitate the style of fake news articles. And then we're going to train a system to detect them. Okay, and this is useful for two things. Number one, to detect whether something is machine generated. Number two, turns out that if you train a system on, to detect good human written news versus, automatically generated fake news that kind of imitates the style of fake news websites, right? Then a system that tries to distinguish those well actually works very well at detecting human written fake news to distinguish them from kind of high quality human written news, right? One problem with automatically generating fake news is that, yeah, I mean, it's making things up and all that, but really there's not that much propaganda techniques used. And those are really, really key if we are going to be manipulated. So kind of we have been working on creating a generator that would insert some of those, right, in the text. It turns out that this kind of makes it more convincing for people, but also if you train systems trained on this kind of data, they are getting better at spotting, human written fake news. Yet another level, I mean, here we're talking about different levels of analysis. So we had analysis at the claim level, right? Whether this is fake news or, whether this is true or false statement. Fake news detection, which is at the article level. The next level was profiling entire websites, right? And now the next level is really looking into entire coordinated communities. And we have been looking into this and we have looking also in the connection between propaganda and coordination. And he moved into different communities during the UK elections. It's kind of basically, if you have, some partisan groups, you expect that, the coordination is a matter of degree. It is a continuum. It's a continuum in the sense that there's some very, very coordinated core, and there's like a little bit bigger, less coordinated periphery, and so on and so forth. And now the question is, what happens if we are going towards the core, into the more hardcore kind of users, right, in the center of the community? Well, you expect that the propaganda there is going to get higher, right? Because those are the people that try to influence the others. And of course, this turns out to hold for most communities, but actually for some communities, this didn't really change. And for some, it even went down. And it turns out this is a good way to recognize communities that are grassroots movements and that are not really manipulated by anybody versus those that are actually kind of, dominated by, some users with agenda. And it's something that was very interesting. It got the best paper award last year at the conference. Another aspect that I want to stress here is multimodality, right? So we haven't talked about propaganda techniques, and actually it might be interesting to study them in memes. Memes are much more powerful, right? I mean, for manipulation, and they are very prolific in social media. So for example, here we have appeal to fear, we have black and white fallacy, where either this or this. Here it is whataboutism, and of course they can be very powerful, right? Kind of also in political, not only in COVID context. And you might be asking the question, right? I mean, it's not only factuality. If you think about the term disinformation, it's something that is both false but also harmful. And you might be asking, are those harmful, right? So we have been sorry about that. We have been looking into this problem, kind of detecting harmful memes and also kind of trying to detect their targets. You know, is it an individual, is it an organization, is the community that is being harmfully targeted? We have been building systems for that. And more recently, we have been looking into, okay, who specifically is being harmfully targeted? So if you give it the meme and you give it the entities that are mentioned there, which can be coming from the text or from the content of the image, which of those are actually harmfully targeted? Even more recently, I mean, this is coming, is going to be published later this year. We have moving into who is the hero, the villain, the victim. It's kind of how different entities are being portrayed, right? Finally, it's important to generate explanations. So we have been working on that as well. It's another upcoming work, kind of next month to present it, where if we have a meme, we try to not only tell you, how, let's say, the Democratic Party here is, portrayed as a victim, kind of who is the hero, the villain, the victim, but also explain why, and generate human language explanation, right? Which is something very, very interesting. And okay, so from fake news to infodemic, it's very interesting. At the time of when the pandemic was declared, the World Health Organization started talking about an infodemic. So they have invented a new term. And not only that, it's very, very early on. I went on their website just like a couple of days after they have declared the pandemic, and I found this list of top 5 priorities to fighting the pandemic. Okay. And you see as number 2, fighting the infodemic. So very early on, they have realized how important this information related to the global pandemic is going to be. And they have also coined a new term, okay, infodemic. Infodemic is a very interesting term. It means that it's a very global phenomenon. It's getting it to another level. But if you think about it, I mean, the terminology that we have been using before, right? I mean, we have been talking about fake news, where the focus was on factuality, but now we're talking about infodemic, where the focus is on harm, not so much even whether it's true or not. And again, this is again from the very, very early on, when the pandemic was declared on February 12, 2020, in MIT Technology Review, see the subtitle about when they're talking about this strange new key term infodemic. What is the subtitle? It's about panic, racism, and stuff like that, right? So, and yeah, this is about the terminology. So kind of we started with misinformation, so kind of disinformation, which is kind of the term that kind of fact-checking organizations, international organizations have adopted, which is something that is both false and means harm. We are now in the infodemic. So if you think of the evolution of the term, initially it was fake news, right? And the focus was really on factuality, and people started doing fact checking. And they quickly realized that the main problem of fake news is not that it's false. The problem is that it's weaponized, okay? So yes, it's false, but it's also harmful, okay? So, and kind of international organizations like the World Health Organization, United Nations, the European Union, NATO, and so on and so forth, fact checkers, journalists, start talking about this information, okay? It has a very clear definition. It's something that is both false, but also harmful, right? And more recently, at the time of the pandemic, we start talking about an infodemic, and kind of the focus really shifted to the harm. You see kind of this evolution. So we started with focusing only on factuality and nothing else, to a balanced view that factuality and harm are equally important, to really focusing on the harm and kind of less so on the kind of, putting the factuality on the back. Because I can have a true statement, right? I can probably kind of, now put some emotional words or kind of blow it out of proportion. I can like cherry pick, right? I can like also kind of select oh, this person died, let's say, because of vaccination. Okay, maybe it's true. And I collect 3 or 4 cases and I only, talk about them and kind of I ignore, the other side of the equation. And we have a kind of, we have designed a holistic approach about that. We have looking into different things, different aspects. I don't want to go into much detail. It was kind of quite interesting and important. Now, luckily, it's getting outdated because the pandemic is going away. Okay, to finish, I'm going to ask the last question. Can we win this war? Okay. And that's not an easy question, right? And because it's a complex problem, it doesn't really have an easy solution. So like 3 years ago, I was invited by the Interparliamentary Assembly, and there were 800 members of parliament from, of course, 200 countries, and they were asking us, and there were like 3 experts on the panel, and they were asking us, okay, what legislation can we possibly pass tomorrow so that we solve this problem, right? And the answer was certain legislation is actually useful, but it's really a complex problem and cannot be solved with just one thing. So you need the collaboration of the social media companies. It's happening on their platforms. You need the fact checkers. You need the media literacy. We can build tools and so on and so forth, right? But still, do we know whether the war can be won? And the answer is positive. So, one example is the example of Finland. Back in May 2019, they have declared that they have won the war. So this was thanks to a very aggressive media literacy program that they have launched. Targeting all levels of society, mostly schools. So teaching them not to believe everything they see. If something makes them very emotional, maybe there's a reason for that. If there's an image that, from certain event, if they are suspicious, they can do reverse image search, see where it's actually from this event, and so on and so forth. They're saying that kind of the impact is, getting less and less, and the fake news is actually becoming largely irrelevant. Of course, it's not disappearing, just like spam is still around. But if you remember 15, 20 years ago, spam was a huge, huge problem. You open your mailbox, it's mostly spam and nothing else. And today, they still spam, but it's put under control. And this is exactly what Finland has made with the fake news. And I think this is a very, very good midterm to long-term solution. And again, stressing that there are many, many other things, kind of technology can help. And cooperation with social media companies, government industry, all this is important because it's a complex problem. And of course, I want to stress that, the solution of Finland might not be so easily adoptable to other countries and regions because their regional specificities, the level of educational system is different. You can see that even in Europe, certain parts, have much, much less media literacy, and in Africa you have different regions and different levels of development, in terms of programs and media literacy. So it's not so easy to say, okay, we take Finland to copy everywhere, right? There are kind of some specificities. Well, to conclude, just before the pandemic, I was in India. And I found this thing in a park with the tomb of Gandhi that was saying, don't listen to rumor. If you do, don't believe it. And I think that if you just listen to Gandhi, a lot of the problems are going to be solved because, we are not going to act based on this, on the false information. We are not going to spread it further, right? Because big part of the problem is that we are spreading it. Okay. And maybe here I can tell you a little bit about the university I come from. So I come from Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence, and this is where it's located. It's not that far from Africa, in the United Arab Emirates, in the Arab Peninsula. And we are the first world university specialized specifically in artificial intelligence. And we are focusing on graduate level studies, only master's and PhD degrees. At this point, we don't have undergraduate programs. We have programs in computer vision, in machine learning, in natural language processing. We have great facilities. We have a lot of GPUs. We offer full financial support to anybody accepted. So kind of you don't need to worry about paying tuitions and fees. You get free accommodation. You have a stipendium to live, right? We are quite young. You are now in about 2 years old. We already have 40 faculty, which means professors. We have 250 students. 31% of them are female. We have 40 nationalities from everywhere around the world. We are committed to green energy. We have our own solar farm that is funding us, kind of providing energy. We have cooperation with major institutions like Weizmann Institute of Science, IBM, and several others that I don't want to tell you about yet because they are not announced, but we have some big names coming. So we have two kinds of programs. We have Master of Science, which is 2 years, and PhD, which is 4 years. And we have computer vision, machine learning, and natural language processing. And later this year are coming robotics and computer science. We also have faculty kind of and postdoc opportunities. So if there are people interested in a postdoc position, you can drop me an email. I can pass this information. If somebody wants to apply for master's or PhD, you can also drop me an email. You can also find information on our website. And as I said, we had like full scholarship. So yeah, it's like $2,000-3,000 depending on master or PhD level. And this kind of tax-free. This is on top of the free accommodation on campus and free annual travel to your home country and full tuitions. Okay, admissions criteria. Well, you can find more on the website. I don't want to take more time with that. Okay, thank you. Questions?
Thank you. I don't know whether you should. Yeah, Eva.
Okay. I see there's something in the chat.
Yeah,
Okay, so there's a quick question about ChatGPT, of course. Okay. Okay. So can they leverage the fact-checking methods? That is a very good question, right? And we are, of course, currently looking into ChatGPT. It's an interesting technology. So we are currently looking into to what extent it can be used to help fact checking. Okay, so it can actually provide background information, can potentially help fact checkers. Can help us spot interesting claims to fact check. Can check whether something was fact checked before. Okay, I'm not saying that it can. I'm saying that kind of we are exploring ways to use it for that, or like detect things that may be propaganda and so on. At the same time, right? Because it's generative model and it's not a problem specifically of ChatGPT. It's a problem also of, let's say, abstractive text summarization, if you want machine translation, question answering, right? I mean, there's a problem of factuality. There's a lot of hallucination. There are things that are being made up. So, for example, there was an example, somebody asked ChatGPT, okay, tell me, list me the female presidents of the US. And it invented like 4 people, with names, with dates and stuff. So kind of you don't want that, right? Kind of you want, I mean, there are places where you want exactly that. You say, write me a fictional story about something, right? That's exactly what you want. An essay, something where you want a fantasy, right? But kind of there are cases where you want really factuality. So I think that's a very, very important problem. And kind of how to make it more factual, or maybe potentially kind of, point to its sources, right? So that we understand, or spotting which part, when it's not factual, or kind of which parts, kind of fact checking the specific output. I think those are going to be very, very important problems. And we are kind of, just scratching the surface of looking into them.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. I can hear something. Please,
Sure.
please.
Okay, other questions, comments?
Yeah. So thank you so much. It was insightful, very grateful. Please share with us the slides and even the opportunities that's presented to us. Thank you very much. Everybody, thank you much for attending the One Talk today. We'll keep you posted. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and yeah, let me know if you have thoughts, if you think that some of these can be applied in the Africa context, you know, to African languages including, right? I'm definitely interested in that. I'm interested in multilinguality. I'm interested in going beyond English and beyond, you know, Europe, right? Yeah, we have opportunities for postdoc, for master and PhD students. We have many applicants from Africa. Yeah, we have some students here on campus, and if you want to get more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.